Today we're going to be working with one-step equations. My expectation is you will copy these examples down in your notebook. They will help you with today's homework. We're going to start with practicing addition equations. If I give you x plus 8 equals 12, that is an addition problem. To isolate the x, I would have to put it with negative x or subtract 8, I am now left with 12 minus 8 is 4. Pretty straightforward. Even if it is written in a different order, if I gave you 9 plus x equals negative 15, because there is not an operation sign there, we know it is a positive 9. Therefore, I would subtract 9 from both sides to isolate the variable, and I end at negative 24. They even will give you the solution on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So if I give you negative 17 equals negative 10 plus x, to isolate the variable, I would need to add 10, negative 7 equals x. We're going to kick it up a notch and include fractions and decimals. 1/4 plus something equals negative 5/16. Again, even though 1/4 is written in the front, no operation positive or negative sign there, I know it's a positive. To isolate the variable, I would need to subtract 1/4. Remember, when you're working with fractions, you need common denominator. I can change 4 into 16 by multiplying by 4, so I would have negative 4/16. Negative 5 minus 4, or negative 5 with negative 4 more, gets me negative 9/16. This cannot be reduced, so that is my final answer. On your calculators, you will find an ABC key. That will help you with fractions if you choose to do it that way. We're also going to do decimals. X plus 10 6/10 equals 3 1/10. Again, this being an addition problem, to isolate the variable, I would subtract. What I usually do mentally is I'm really thinking this minus this, and I would take the sign of the larger number to get negative 7.5. Those are the type of problems you'll see on today's homework in Schoology. Now we're going to move on to subtraction problems. If I have x minus 12 equals negative 3, I still want to isolate the variable, so I will have to do positive 12. Negative 3 and positive 12 give me a positive 9. If, again, they give you the solution or the answer first, negative 20 equals x minus 26. I need to isolate this variable, so I will add 26 to both sides, and I would end at 6. When they give you a math problem with a set of parentheses in there, we're going to stop writing things this way. This is really just saying x minus 14 equals 6. So I would need to add 14 again to isolate the variable, and if I add 14 there, I would get x as 20. We will be subtracting with fractions, so x minus 3/5 equals 7/10. Just like with addition, you are going to need common denominators. Well, I realize I can change a 5 into a 10, so I'm going to keep 7/10 the same. Changing 5 into 10 is multiplying by 2, so I would have 6 tenths. Add my numerator, keep the denominator. We definitely need to simplify. 10 goes into 13 one time, and I would have 3 left over. With decimals, I could have 6.4 equals x minus 3.5. To isolate the variable, I would need to add 3.5 to both sides, and I would end at 9.9. So we have covered addition and subtraction. Feel free to rewind the video, pause it as necessary. Now I would like to move on to multiplication. A number written next to a variable means multiplication. To isolate the variable, I would have to divide. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so I'm left with 1x. And negative 20 divided by 4 is negative 5. If the solution or the answer is written first, the process is still the same. A number written next to a variable, multiplication, I would have to divide to isolate the variable. X would be 4. We will be working with fractions. Now we need to be careful. The variable is not part of the fraction. This is still a number written next to a variable, so this is multiplication. So 1/3 of some number, the variable, I don't know, equals 15. To undo multiplication, we're still going to divide. Remember, when you're dividing by fractions, it's multiplying by the reciprocal. 15 times 3 is 45. We will be working with decimals also. I will admit I used a calculator to kind of work on some of these. A number written next to a variable is multiplication, so we will need to divide to isolate the variable. When I divided that on my calculator, I ended at 7. But I want to talk about what your homework will be like. If I give you negative 5 and 26/100 x, and that equals 51 and 9/10, I still would divide by negative 5.26. But when I did that on my calculator, I ended with a screen full of digits. We are going to be rounding to the nearest tenth. So that means I only want one decimal place. Looking at the 6, that would create making the 8 round to a 9. So I would have x equals negative 9 and 9/10. No spaces between the negative sign, the digits, or the decimal place. Finally, we have division. Something divided by negative 4 equals 16. Often my brain wants to work really fast and I divide and come up with negative 4. But we know negative 4 divided by negative 4 is definitely not 16. That is division. So to isolate the variable, I'm going to multiply by negative 4. So 64 divided by negative 4 gets me 16. I'm not gonna care if they give me the solution first. I'm gonna slow my brain down to make sure they do not tell me 3, but I need to multiply to undo that to isolate the variable. Negative 6 times negative 18 is 108. You also will have problems with decimals. I recommend you use a calculator. Makes all of our lives a little easier. I will multiply by 3 7/10. excuse me, when I do that on my calculator, I ended at, I don't know what I ended at. All right, I had to bust out my calculator. I multiplied those together, and my calculator is telling me 29.822. Again, knowing I want it rounded to the nearest tenth, because that is a 2, my solution would be negative 29 and 8/10. You're going to find a set of problems that will look maybe a bit peculiar. Negative x over 4/5. So we're taking an unknown and dividing it by a fraction, and that equals 25. There is a negative sign, but I'm going to apply the negative sign to the fraction. So this is actually division. I have something divided by that to equal 25. Just like we were doing over here, we were multiplying to undo that. We multiplied here. I will multiply by negative 4/5. So I'm going to come over here and multiply by negative 4/5. I'm going to do a little cross reducing. You may use your calculator. And I end with negative 20.